Good morning, everyone. Welcome to video number 9. Can you believe we're already on number 9? Time is going quickly. So today I'm excited because this is something I love to teach, and I think you're going to be excited when you're learning to do it. We're going to talk about chords. Now, a couple of my older students know already a little bit about chords and how to play chord progressions, but this won't hurt you to listen as well. And all of my new students, you're going to be learning something new. So today we're going to first of all talk about chords, and then we'll review a little bit about the scale that we talked about last week, the C major scale, because we need to understand it in order to talk about chords. So we'll also learn about Roman numerals, and all of that put together, you'll be able to play some chords. And chords are the basis of the left hand when playing lots of music. So this is something that I think is going to be very beneficial to you. So first, let's get started with an explanation of what a chord really is. Well, it's when you play more than one note simultaneously, and that means at one time. So left hand is the main hand that we're going to talk about today when studying chords, and we're going to see that we're usually playing 3 notes in our chords that we learn today. So let's talk about a chord. Okay, so here's the keyboard, and this is what we're going to consider our middle C. And so this is our left hand low C right here. Now, we've all talked about steps, skips, and repeats. So today is an opportunity for you to put into practice what you've learned about skipping. Because to form our chords, we're going to need to know what a skipping pattern looks like. So, first of all, we're going to go to the left hand, and let's just review the notes in the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And the definition for a scale is 8 notes or tones in a certain order. So that's what a scale is. All right, we're going to start with this C, our low C, and we're going to skip a note, which means we're leaving out D. We're going to go to our E. And then we're going to skip our F, and we're going to go to our G. Now, when we do that, we are going to be playing a C, an E, and a G all at the same time. So my left hand would be playing the 5, my middle man would be on the E, and my thumb would be on the G. So I would play a chord, all 3 of those notes at one time. In just a second, I'm going to show you what that looks like on the staff. I just want to talk about it first. Okay? So we're going to call this our number 1 chord. And that's how we write the number 1 in Roman numerals. This looks like a capital I. Okay? Now, let me erase these little stars, because we have our number 1 chord figured out. We only have 3 chords to talk about today, so that's going to be pretty easy. We're going to go to the 4th note in the C major scale, so let's count up. C, D, E, F. Now, when we start on F, and we put together a chord using the skipping pattern, it would be notes F, A, and C. F, A, and C. Now we're going to arrange them a little differently when we actually start playing them so we can reach them more conveniently. But those are the actual notes of the chord. That will be called our IV. In Roman numerals, a V is 5, and if you put an I before it, it's like a takeaway. Take 1 from 5, so this is called our 4 chord. And this is called our 1 chord. Okay, now let me erase my stars. And we're going to talk about our last chord. Remember, a chord is when you play more than one note at a time. You're playing several notes together. Okay, so now we're going to go to the C major scale and count up. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, that's our scale. We want to count up to our 5th note in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our bass note is actually a G now. So if we were using our skipping pattern, we would be skipping from G to B to D. Okay? But this particular chord is a little different. It's actually going to be called the 5-7 chord. Now let me write that down. That's our V with a little 7 beside it. So what we're doing is we're going to the 5th note of the scale. We're doing our skipping, but because of the 7, we have to skip one more time. So we'll include an F, G, B, D, F. Now when we actually play that chord, we're going to leave the D out because, just for convenience sake, it's easier to play the chord and we still have 3 notes. So this is going to be G, C, and F. G, B, and F when we play our 5-7 chord. G, B, and F. Okay? And that's called our 5-7 chord. Now those are the only 3 chords we're talking about today. Okay? I want to show you what those chords look like when you see them on a staff. So this will start to make sense to you. Okay, so what we've just done is talked about how to form the chord. Now, go ahead and get your notebook out because this is going to make more sense if you actually write it yourself. You've got your notebook and your pencil, your workbook, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a staff, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and I'm going to put an extra line down here because I was a little too close to my keyboard. So there are our 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to close them in on the end with bar lines so that I have a big measure here. Anytime you close in an area with bar lines, you create a measure. So that's called a measure. Now I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 to my 4th line, and I'm going to draw my bass clef sign. Okay, a dot above the 4th line and a dot below the 4th line. Okay, so you've got that much. You're ready so that we can talk about how to draw in our chords. Now remember, the Roman numerals were 1, 4, 5, 7. Those are the 3 chords we're going to talk about. And a chord is when you're playing more than one note at a time. Okay, so our very first chord, we said you go to the first note of the C scale and then skip. So we need to have a C, an E, and a G. So in the left hand, we know our spaces are all cows eat grass. So let's go to our C first. All cows, that's a space note. And let's draw our space 2. That's our C. Now, all cows eat. Let's draw the next space. And the last one, all cows eat grass. There's our G. C-E-G. C, E, and G. Okay? When you have a chord, more than one note at a time, and the notes are stacked up like that, you're going to play your bottom note with your fifth finger, your E with your third finger, and your G with your thumb. So write that fingering in. This is your 5, 3, and 1, and all three of those notes are going to be played at the same time. That is called your number 1 chord. Okay, so you've got your root position number 1 chord in C. Now to play our number 4 chord, remember we said you go to the 4th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. We start skipping. So we have an F, an A, and a C. Okay, now here's where we're going to change the order of those notes just a little bit, because it's easier to not have to move our hand from here to up here and down here. So we're going to rearrange the notes just a little bit to still include an F, an A, and the C, but they'll just be in a different order. We're going to move that C that would have been way up here to the bottom, so that we'll have the same note that we had in the 1 chord. So we'll have our C here, we'll have our F here, and we'll have our A here. So the only thing you're actually doing, you're keeping your 5th finger on the C. You're not going to play your 3rd finger on E. You're going to play your 2nd finger on F. And you're going to move your thumb from the G over 1 note to an A. So you have a C, F, and A. And that makes up your number 4 chord. So now we have a 1 chord, C, E, and G. We have a C, F, and A chord, which makes up our number 4 chord. And we only have one more that we're talking about today. And that, who remembers? What was that last chord called? I heard somebody. Yes, it's a 5-7 chord. All right. Now I'm going to erase this, what we have so far, so I have enough room to write the 5-7 chord. Okay, so you've got, everybody's had time to draw this in. Well, you know what? I might can just extend this staff. Let's do this. Let's just extend our staff so you can see all 3 of the chords at one time. We'll draw our 5-7 chord in this measure. From bar line to bar line, the space in between is called a measure. So this is my first measure on this board, and this is my second measure on the board. So far we have our 1 chord, and our number 4 chord. And here comes the last chord for today. It's called, in Roman numerals, a V means 5. This is our 5-7 chord. Okay, so remember to do the notes in the 5-7 chord. You count to the 5th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to be building on the G. Okay. So when we're skipping from G to B to D, and we said you had to skip one additional time because we're adding the 7th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's going to be our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. It's our F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're counting up the 7th note of where you started, and we started on G. Now, to make this easier, we're not going to include this 3rd one. We're going to have our 1st, our 3rd, and our 7th note included. So here goes. When you have your number 4 chord, you had a C, an F, and an A. Well, for the 5-7, we're going to play that same F, but we're going to play the G beside it, and we're going to have to move our pinky down from C to the B. Okay, so there's my B, there's my F, and there's my G. And the numbers are 1, 2, and 5. Okay, so let's see if we've got the right notes. We needed a G, there's our G. We needed an F, and we needed a B. So there we go. Those are the notes in the 5-7 chord. All right, so let's review. The 1 chord, the notes are stacked strictly in skipping pattern. A skipping pattern of C, E, and G. C, E, and G. That's the number 1 chord. When we play our number 4 chord, it's almost the same, but we have our C on the bottom. It's the same as the 1 chord. But we don't play the 3. We move up to the 2 on F. Right next door, and move our thumb up 1 note from G to A. So our notes are C, F, and A. That's our number 4 chord. And our last chord, the 5-7, we move our pinky down from C to B. Our 2 stays on F, and our thumb comes from the A back down 1 note to the G. And that creates your 5-7 chord. And all those notes are close together. That's why we put them in that position, so that we can get to them easily. Our 1 chord, our 4 chord, and our 5-7 chord, back to 1. Now you're going to have a worksheet in your workbook, and it looks like this, and it's going to actually have those chords that I've drawn, talked about. Okay, let's look at it. It says the sheet that you need to pull out just to practice with is called the 5-7 chord, because it's going to have them in order for you. Left hand, this is the first one that you'll actually practice. And there's that number 1 chord, the C chord that I talked about. There's your number 4 chord. and there's your 5/7. This is the way we have written them because it's easier to reach them. So this is the first place that you want to practice, is right here on your sheet. Okay, because there's your 1, your 4, back to 1, 5/7, and back to 1. Okay, and that's written in the bass clef. So you'll have them written out from the board with the names of the notes, and then when you get your sheet out, it'll make sense because the pictures will look exactly like what I drew on the board. They also let you learn to play them in the right hand, and they give you the fingering that you would have to use in the right hand. Okay, so this is going to be a valuable sheet as we are studying chords, and I'll pull that out and show it to you in your workbook. But just look through and you'll be able to find it. Okay? At the end of the video, I'm going to go out to the keyboard and actually play that chord progression, which means you go from one chord to another. You start with your 1 chord, you go to your 4. You repeat your 1 chord, you go to your 5/7, and then you always come back to your 1. So the chord progression, that means going from one to another, is 1, 4, 1, 5/7, back to 1. And I'll play that on the piano in just a few minutes. I just want to pull out the worksheet that you're going to actually fill out this week. We're going to go back and review note values, and you'll actually be writing in some information. This is in your workbook, so you'll make sure that you find this sheet. They give you some information about reviewing the names of the quarter note, the half note, the whole note. How many beats do they get? Well, a quarter note gets 1. A half note gets 2. A whole note gets 4. And then they actually show you the rest that go with them. That means silence. So if you see a rest that looks like this, you'll wait 1 beat and not play or do anything. Just be quiet for 1 beat. If you see a rest that looks like this, you'll just wait for 2 beats. Just like the half note gets 2, the half rest gets 2. And the last one here, the whole note gets 4, and the whole rest gets 4 as well. Okay? I always tell that story, some of you probably remember it, about these two because they are so similar, it's hard to remember which way they go for the half or the whole. Well, back in the old days, when men had on their hats and they met a lady in the street or a restaurant, whatever, they would take their hat off, tip it, and say, "Howdy, ma'am." Well, that showed that they were being a gentleman. And so if they took their hat off, upside down and back to their head, then they were a whole gentleman, a whole rest. But if they kept their hat on their head and didn't show respect for the ladies, they were only a half of a gentleman. So if the hat's still on his head, he's a half rest. But if he takes his hat off and tips it upside down, he's a whole gentleman. So hopefully that will help you to remember the whole and the half rest. Then you're going to, on this next section, tell the number of counts each of the notes get in the top box, and then you will write the rest that goes with that type of note. So if it's a quarter note and it gets 1 beat, you'll have to draw a quarter rest below it in the second box. So you can use this as your guide as you're learning the difference between them. Now this last part that you do, it says be sure to read your directions. You can only draw in 1 G. to complete the measure. The time signature on the top says we need 4 beats. Well, this first measure has a half and a quarter. 2 plus 1 is 3. So we need 1 more quarter note. So you draw a quarter note G. This note is a half note. It only gets 2 beats. So we need another note that gets 2 beats. So you'll draw another G, but it'll have to be another half note because you have to have 2 plus 2 equals 4. Each of these measures has to have a total of 4 beats because of the time signature right at the beginning. The number on the top tells us we have to count to 4 in every measure. Okay, so that's your worksheet for your workbook this week. All right, let's go out on the porch and let me play for you those chords that we've learned today, which were the C, E, G, number 1 chord, the C, F, A, number 4 chord, and the B, F, and G, which made up the 5, 7. All right, I'm gonna flip this around so you can see my hand. And here is my left hand, C, E, and G. And I'm going to play all of those notes at one time. That's the number 1 chord. Now to play the 4, I simply push down the 2 and move the thumb up. That's my number 4 chord. That's a C, an F, and an A. I go back and play my number 1. And this is the last chord, which is a 5, 7. I move my pinky down to B, play my F, and add the G. That's the 5, 7 chord. And then we go back to the 1. So here's the progression. 1, 4, 1, 5, 7, 1. Okay? Now, just as a reminder, as you're practicing your C major scale, C, D, E, thumb under, F, G, A, B, C. Backwards, we use all 5. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Okay, so that's a great review of the C major scale. We've learned about chords. You're going to do a worksheet on note values, and be sure you're practicing, writing your times down on your chart, doing your app, and I'm just so proud of all of you. You're doing a great job, and we are learning about music and having fun at the same time. So enjoy this beautiful day, have fun, and learn something new this week. I'll see you at your lesson. Have a great day. Bye-bye.